Welcome to C Squared Biz Growth Iron Sharpens Iron podcast, where CEOs and entrepreneurs share how they are overcoming business growth and sustainability challenges.
Welcome to C Squared Biz Growth Iron Sharpens Iron podcast, where CEOs and entrepreneurs share how they're overcoming the business growth and sustainability challenge. Welcome. I'm your host, John Hale III, and we're excited to have as our special guest today, Mr. Solomon Luke. He'll discuss his journey from immigrant to CEO of a global information technology and digital marketing firm, Strategia Solutions. He lists as his core competencies international business management and development, strategic planning and analysis, enterprise program and project management, business process reengineering, enterprise data strategy and architecture, cloud technology implementation. But he leaves out his superpower, which is construction, roofing, and cooking. Welcome, Solomon, to the show. How you doing today?
I'm very good, John. Thanks a lot for having me on today.
Yeah, we're excited. Hey, we just want to get started understanding how you're showing up today, meaning we see you as a successful founder and CEO. You started your company 10, 15 years ago, but this is what we see. However, what we're missing from what we see is how you started. So you can give us a sense of your childhood, family, where you started off, and how that impacts what we see today.
Sure. So basically, I think the way it started is with my father. So we used to, in Trinidad, we used to hang out. In the U.S., it's called a porch. In Trinidad, they call it a gallery. And my father, when I was a young boy, he used to take me out to the gallery. I would sit and talk for hours.
Okay.
We would talk about several different things. He would talk about undergraduate degrees, graduate degrees. He would talk about hard work. And I think one of the most important lessons I learned is there was this sports. We used to have a thing in Jacob Settlement where I live called like Sports Day. And on that sports day, you would have to run like 100 meters dash or 200 meters dash. And I used to like running sprints. But there was an arch nemesis that I had called, his name was Otis. And my father told me that if I want to go down to that sport parade, I have to get in that race. So it was a big fear to me at the time to go to the race because I didn't want to face Otis because I didn't want to lose that race. And I know Otis was fast, but I didn't have the belief that I could have beaten him. But nonetheless, he summed it up, chalked it up, went down to the race, and I ended up winning that race. And I won several other races that day. So I think in growing up, having that relationship with my father really laid the foundation on going out and doing work, embracing your fears from early and understanding that you would get some tribulations ahead of time. But if you work through those fears, you could be successful. So I think growing up with him, he died when I was about 16, but spent a lot of time together. And those one-on-one conversations, in looking back at them now, is what I think shaped a lot of my mindset towards challenges, obstacles, and just really plowing through hard times. And we could get to some hard times as well in the U.S., but that is really where that came from. Is really from my father in Trinidad.
Hey, well, thank you for sharing that. That is such a great story and example for all of us who are listening, just the impact we can have within our own families, and then also if we're mentoring or just spending time with young people and just distilling our knowledge and wisdom. So thank you for sharing that. That really hits me here in the heart as a father as well. Now, you once told me that, hey, John, I'm a 12-year college graduate when we first met. So what took so long? Can you fill in the gaps for us?
Yes, I could do that. So this is a story that you need to hear this story because it's going to make you laugh a lot. And at the same time, I'm hoping that it could inspire other people. The truth is, when I first came to the U.S., I did not have a green card. So I had to work. So for 6 months, you'd be in the U.S. and I came in on a B2 visa, which is a holiday visa. And so I was legal for 6 months and I came to some folks that lived in Trinidad before and they were permanent in the U.S. And that's typically the way it works. You live in Trinidad, people that you know may migrate and then they would invite you to stay with them and then you would branch off. So I came to the U.S., started working with this company called Simbral Foundation for Community Services. And in working for that company, my legal status ran out. So I no longer was legal in the United States of America. So what that means is I had to work that job. I was making about $4 an hour, $5 an hour. But I've always wanted to go to school. The plan was always to go to school. But no one took the time to tell me when you first come to this country, you have to switch your status within that window. No one told me that. So I had no clue of what to do until that time had passed. So I worked with this company and I went to Montgomery College. And this is a true story. I went to Montgomery College. I tried going to UDC, University of District of Columbia, and they turned me down. And I went to Montgomery College. And so I met this woman called Miss Jones. I'll never forget that name. And I told her, I really want to go to school. I need to get an education. Whatever she could do to help, I would be very appreciated. And Miss Jones said, I will help you to get here. But let me be clear. If immigration comes knocking on your door, do not call my name. Okay, no problem. That would not happen. And so what happened, John, is I took classes. I was working at the group home and I would do construction work. I would work at the group home from 3 to 12 a.m. So I would work construction from 9 a.m. to about 2 p.m., work from 3 p.m. to 12 a.m., then 12 a.m. to 9 a.m. Then I would get off at 9 a.m. and then do construction again, then get back from 3 to 12. And during that time, I would go to school like on a Wednesday, on a Thursday, and I would take one class. I couldn't afford a lot of classes at the time, so I would just take one course per semester. I would take two courses per semester because I didn't have the funding, and I could not get funding because I was out of status. And so my mother would help as best as she can, and I would take money that I've saved to go to school. So the route to get to that undergraduate degree took longer than most people would have taken to do it, but sticking ahead, fighting, going through the process, doing it one step at a time allowed me to graduate. So it took longer than it should, but the core reason behind it is I stuck to it. So I used to take care of mentally retarded people during the day. So I would cook, I would clean, I would wash their clothes, iron their clothes, ride with them to the daycare. And that used to be my job. That was the shift work. I would do that shift work and then I would then double up and then go to school. So my path took not a more unconventional road because I couldn't go full time. I couldn't afford to go full time. And I was in status to go full time anyway. So I just plugged it away and took one class at a time to make it through. And once I get over that hump and my status changed, I was able to hurry up offense, complete the undergraduate degree, went back to grad school and completed grad school. So that's really the story. And that's a true story of why it took me that long to get that undergraduate degree. The graduate was a little quicker because everything was much quicker than that. But the undergraduate degree was really tough and took me a long time, but I was able to persevere.
Well, thank you for sharing that tremendous story, Solomon. And it really hits me in the heart that just what your dad just drilled into you and then what you accepted, how those seeds that were planted must have really been a part of your motivation, just being able just to stick to it, to have the grit, just to work through the grind of getting that degree during that time.
Yes. And the strange thing is that each day I would go to work. I used to catch the 18 bus. And each day I would go to work. I would walk down a particular side of the street. And I would always tell myself, one day I would not have to walk down the street again. It may not be tomorrow, but one day, once I keep plugging away, keep learning from mistakes, keep going to school, keep working hard, one day I would not be walking down the street anymore. And it all worked out, man.
Yeah, well, fantastic. So during this time, what was your immigration status and kind of how did that change, I guess, by the time you got the degree, or kind of when during your journey there, undergrad journey, those 12 years, when did the immigration status change?
The immigration status changed around 80, I came in 89. Immigration status changed about 94 to 98. I got my work permit in 98. So what happened is that I was at the group home. I was actually working at a group home, and a woman came to interview for that job at the group home. It so happened that the woman at the time was an employee and I was the manager at that time. So I was walking around teaching that woman how the place go, how everything worked. And that woman turned out to be now my wife of 31 years. So I told her, we end up getting close, getting into a relationship. And I told her, look, I don't have a green card and she is a U.S. citizen. So if we get married, I could become a U.S. citizen as well, and it would open up a lot of doors for me. And so we got married, and as a result of that, I was able to steamroll through the system. And the marriage at the time was meant to help, but it turned out that was true love, and we stuck it out, and we're together today. And this year is going to be 31 years that we have been married. So it worked out really good for me to find the right person to help and stay with that person.
Congratulations.
And
That's a fantastic story.
Really well for me in the long run.
Well, Solomon, thank you for sharing that story, particularly about how you met your wife. I never knew that. And what I find interesting is when you first met her and were showing around, how that just evolved. And that is a great story. And thank you for sharing that as well, just about the grit and your journey. You know, one last thing about that part of your journey, if you will. As an immigrant to the U.S., what do you see in America, perhaps, that some of us folks that are native-born U.S. citizens, what do you see here in America in terms of opportunity that we might be missing?
I think you hit that key word in that sentence is opportunity. What I see here is a place for real opportunity and success for anything that you're willing to put your work into. You need to be disciplined, and you also need to be consistent, because what I've learned over time is you can be disciplined, but if you don't have consistency with that discipline, you won't make it. So there's a lot of opportunities in America, but you have to be willing to work really hard. You need to block out all of the noise and just be zero focus on exactly what you want that goal to be. And I think you can be successful, but you need to block a lot of noise because there's a lot of negativity. People say a lot of different things about this country, but I'm proof that if you block that noise and you focus on one singular goal of what you're trying to get to, you will be successful in this country. So I think that what I think a lot of people may miss about this country. I mean, my country, Trinidad, is a great place to live. I love my country, but the opportunities that I've had here to grow and to expand the company and to meet new people and to really get more opportunities is much greater in this country than I think anywhere else in the world. So that's what I think that a lot of folks may miss. The opportunities is there, but you need to go out and get it.
Yeah. Hey, well, thank you for sharing that. And as we think about lessons for our CEOs and others that are listening today, really having that discipline and that focus and that drive. And I love the idea of just blocking out the noise, particularly when you think about all the emails we may receive or text or whatever that come through. It's just blocking out and focus and having that discipline as it relates to our company and our business to grow it that we need to have. So that's a great lesson, along with the grit in the early part of your story, that sometimes you just got to grind through it, but you have to have that focus and discipline to block out the noise. So thanks for sharing that with you. So as you start your career, you start working, what inspired you to start your company, and how did you define its mission and its vision when you first started?
So I think initially I used to work with, this is another story I could tell you about startup of the company. When I first started, I used to work at a company called ISS, and I used to be the global research manager. And at that company, I had a very good friend of mine called Fang Zhu. He also had his company. And one day I went down to him and told him that my aunt wanted a website. And it's a HTML website. Do you know anyone that could actually help to build this HTML website? And he shut the door. I remember I was in his office and he shut the door. He said, hold up and shut this door real quick. Come take a look at this website. I do this because he didn't want the employers to know that he didn't want the employers to know that he had a small business. So he shut the door and said, hey, look, I can do this. So after we started, I said, okay, then let's do this project. And over time, I started working with him, and I used to do a lot of the business development, testing, requirements. I used to do a lot of the work, the groundwork, and then he would do a lot of the development work. So he would be the prime developer, and I used to get paid. It used to be, I think, 30-70. I think he would get 70%, and I would get 30%. or something like that, based on how the arrangement was at the time. But over time, I asked him, because I realized I started generating business. As I said, would you mind having a partnership? So we both could be like partners. But he said that he didn't want to do that because there was a lot of paperwork involved. And I understand with Maryland here with partnerships is the paperwork, liability, taxes. It's a process here that you have to do with in the US in order if you want to do the partnership. So he said he didn't want to do that right now. It wasn't something that he felt that he needed to do. No problem. So I said, okay, no problem. But I was torn between doing so much work and then at the same time, I was actually working for someone else to some degree. I thought about it and I went to ISS one day. I used to work at this company and I used to go to the gym every morning and I met a guy called Jim Doyle in that gym. We used to work out together and I was telling him my scenario. I said, I like Fang, I like working with Fang, but he don't want to do a partnership. But I would like to maybe think about doing my own thing and I could partner with him. And so he said, well, why don't you start your own company? I said, I'm scared because I think that's a really big deal, to go start your own company. He said, no, it costs a couple $100. Go to the Department of Assessments, fill out your paperwork. He said, it's hard work. I'm not going to start my own company because I don't want to put in all that work. I'll work for somebody else, but you could go set it up. So I took his advice, I thought about it, and I figured, let me think about it a little bit more. So that was the first person that spoke to me about starting up the company. The next person was a guy called Andre Bennett from Philadelphia. And he called me one day and we were talking normal, casual conversations. And he said he saw some of my work. No, we were talking as a matter of fact, and I was telling him about some processes and how I was doing stuff. And he said, you should start your own company. I said, I really don't want to do that. That's a big deal. I don't want to have that responsibility. That's way above my pay grade. He said, no. I think hearing you talk, I looked at some of your documentation, the way you do things, man, you should start your own company. And so I took both advice and I went ahead, sign up with Department of Assessment, do things, started doing everything for myself, started working with Fang now and in a different way. So we were now two separate companies. He had his own company and I had my own company. So then the pay structure would change. He would give me a price. I would then bake that price into the project. So things started churning much differently after I started my own company. And so I think that's kind of like the groundwork of how the company started, by really getting advice from people, encouraging me to do something that I was uncomfortable doing, but I decided to do it anyway. Even though I'm uncomfortable, let me go ahead and do that. With respect to the vision, early on, I really wanted to offer technology services to small businesses because I felt they didn't have the tools, they didn't have the funding. So we would do projects really cheap to help folks. We would offer payment plans to help folks to get projects through. And we do that even today. So part of the mission and the goal is to also help and pull up other small businesses to get them what they need, because many of them don't have IT budgets. They don't have an IT budget set aside as the government do, the federal government does. And so I'm here to facilitate that, to give them good technology services for a reasonable price and give them an option to pay as they go so that they could also grow their company. Secondly, another part of the vision is I've always wanted to do projects in the Caribbean. In Trinidad, I wanted to go back to do projects there. And that vision to do projects globally is actually bearing fruition today. We have deployed projects all over the world. In Australia, we are doing projects in the UK. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. We are rolled out a mobile app for the Caribbean, even though it's in the US. So the vision of just one country and the Caribbean, that vision grow so much into a much wider scope. And that has a lot to do with my team. And I could talk about the team a little bit later on. But to answer the question in particular, that's where the company started with respect to getting input from folks that tell me to do something that I was uncomfortable doing, but I did it anyway. and the vision with where the company would be and what are the projects I wanted to do and where I wanted to do it and who I wanted to serve. And serving these smaller businesses, medium-sized businesses, entrepreneurs, nonprofits, that was always the mission. And so I was able to accomplish those.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. What really inspires me about that story in particular is getting over kind of that self-doubt that, we as CEOs, a lot of CEOs listening may have a sense of it starting the company or taking that next step with the company, kind of jumping to the next level. It's interesting how somehow other people can see in you what you didn't see in yourself.
Correct.
Yes. And it's really interesting. An importance to surround ourselves with people as a sounding board that you did there. So you mentioned a key point in terms of starting the business, then beginning the growth. So as your business began to grow and scale, what role has technology played in the scaling of your business?
So I would say technology plays a very, very huge role in that business because we are, in fact, a technology firm. We provide end-to-end software solutions for customers. And I think when you look at the role that technology has, let's say ChatGPT, we look at Microsoft Copilot, we look at AWS, Azure, cloud services, technology play a very huge role in our business. A lot of times we're able now to automate tasks much easier. Before we have branched off to managed services, where we are managed services provider, where we do cloud implementations, networking. We move systems from on-prem to Azure, AWS. We do digital marketing, a lot of that now. So we leverage cloud technology and software to a much higher degree now as we did in the past. So technology is a key factor in how we work. We use AI tools for code. It's just much, much better now in the way we leverage technology for the work that we do for our customers.
Hey, well, thank you for sharing that in terms of just the technology, particularly as a technology company. Sometimes we may look at it, it's kind of obvious, but it's really, you're using your solutions to help the businesses solve problems and the challenges that they have.
Yes.
So you're leveraging your technology and evolving that to your customers as well.
Yes. And we're also leveraging that technology for our own consumption. We use ChatGPT 4.0. We use ChatGPT. We use Copilot. We use these technologies. We deploy cloud services to Google Cloud, to Azure Cloud. We are leveraging cloud technology. So we are using these services. So in other words, we are eating our own dog food. Right? Age would tell you anytime, look, I would go to ChatGPT. I would try to find a template. I would leverage ChatGPT to locate information. I would go to ChatGPT to look at a code, to research a code. So we are using the technology and leveraging it for our technology services.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Have partnerships or collaborations been key to your growth? And if so, can you give just a couple of examples how they have?
Partnerships has been a critical component of our growth. And I will give you a story that leads back to you.
Okay.
This story really tells of how impactful partnership, relationships, collaboration helps. A couple of years ago, I went to the Maryland Black Chamber of Commerce. And at the time, and I tell H and Sam this story each time, they didn't want us there. I had clamored, I had knocked on doors, I had kicked down doors to get to do their website project. I would not get the username, password, credentials. They would not return my emails. They would not return my calls. And I had always told them, I would like to, I think that we are the best fit for doing your project. That's what I told them at the time, the president at the time. And so I became a member and I stuck with it. And it took years. Just sticking with it again, it changed leadership. Ken became the president. And so by Ken becoming the president, I was still a member. I attended meetings and I told Ken the same story I told, I think Alyssa is her name. Hey, look, I think that we are the best company for this organization. We are going to deliver the best solution at a competitive price and quality that's unmatched. Our people are the best at what they do. He said, well, I'm not ready to do our website. So again, no one paid any mind. I was still knocking on the door. By joining that partnership, becoming part of that organization, met Don. And meeting Don opened up another door because I spoke to Don about what I did. Don liked what we did. We did a project for Don. Through Don introduced me to Joyce. Joyce Harewood. Joyce was also a member of that organization. We did projects for Joyce, and she's in Bermuda. So I want to show you how we are doing projects overseas. The vision was always to do projects overseas, but I'm showing you the pathway to get there may not always be what you envision it to be. But if you stick with what you know, you would eventually get there. And so I joined MBCC, met Don knew Joyce, got Joyce project. Don knows you. Don introduced you to me.
Yes.
And so we are here today because of that partnership, because of that collaboration, because of that trust. So partnerships play a huge role. We are here today having a conversation about collaboration and how important it is to collaborate with your peers, with your teams to make projects occur. And so that's how we are coming around circle to this podcast because of that relationship through MBCC. And that relationship has given us a lot of referrals. We have gotten, I don't know if you know Tony Parchment, Tony EBC. We have gotten Tony's project. We are actually doing a web-based application for Tony for the Black Business Directory. That's on tap to be deployed this quarter. Very good relationship. Through Tony, we have gotten Surge 2.0. We have another business there, another relationship with Marvin Dickinson. That's also another relationship. So the point is, these collaboration, these partnerships have proven to be very effective at treat people right, treat people fair, do good work, charge people reasonable prices, and you will always grow your company.
Yes, Solomon. So thank you for that answer. Now, in terms of what lessons have you learned from scaling your business? What have been some of the setbacks and things that you've learned? Can you give us a story or two, or an example or two?
Sure. For scaling, I can give you a very recent example of that. We have multiple projects now in production systems, and we have several other smaller projects. So we have a two-tier system. We have larger projects that are already in prod, that the impact is high, and we are working on. And then we have some smaller projects that are in the pipeline. As we grow, you are going to get setbacks and you would have to make adjustments. And a most recent case or a most recent story that I could tell you is that it happens in real time. So in the past, we would have one resource take care of a couple of different things. And so our chief technology officer, Sam, he would run all of the development teams. He would have the key developers and the website development team under his umbrella. But as we grow, I realized that this load of managing these multiple projects, large-scale projects and small-scale projects, was getting to be too much. And so Sam also realized part of that, and he spoke to me. Him and I, we had a couple conversations early in the mornings, and we started changing the way we do things. And as we grow, we realized that he too realized that, okay, I could do this and this and this. And we even had a recent call with the team and our chief operating officer, Hassan, which we call H. We all had that conversation. And I had said, well, you can no longer do this. And Sam said, well, no, I can. And I think H said, well, Sam, you may not be able to. And then H agreed, which is Hassan, the chief operating officer, that the way to do it now is to separate these responsibilities. So we have now, as we grow, we alter in the way that we do business. We are now separating roles. We are going to have separate roles for separate tasks. We are going to build more of a governance structure in our UAT team. So we are going to have a specified UAT tester, which is going to establish the governance of how we test applications. And so we have separate server team, and they will all fall under the same structure internally in the company, where they would all bubble up to the CTO, COO, respectively. But as we grow, we realize that we no longer could be dabbling into the weeds as we used to. We need to then get specific resources that could accept those responsibilities while we take a look at it from 30,000 feet up. Keeping our pulse on the task, still managing those tasks, but at the same time spreading it out a little bit more, onboarding more people so that we could definitely scale much better. So that's a real case scenario that recently happened with us just a couple of weeks ago, where we had a resource issue and I had to step in with Sam. We talked it through. We pulled Hassan in as well. We had that conversation and we all agreed, okay, this is not a cookie cutter shop as yesteryear when we were doing smaller implementations, right? We are doing enterprise applications. These applications are all in production. And so the risk of failure is higher. So it means we need to step our game up better, right? We need to match that intensity. So we made adjustments, very agile. That's a real case of scale your company, but as you scale, be mindful of some of the setbacks and make those adjustments in an agile fashion. Talk to your team, get that collaboration, get that communication, and then you'll be successful. And really, the team that I have is unmatched. We talk almost every day. We may not have technical tag-ups every day, but we would reach out each day on Teams, on Skype. Is there anything that I need to do? Is there anything I need to help with? And then they will respond, hey, no, we good. This is what we have. Then I could go and do my thing. They would do their thing. But we have a very close collaborative relationship on Skype. We have a system of communication in our portal where everyone is held accountable. We are all attached to these projects. We may not be actually doing all the work anymore. We have resources doing that work, but we are in the portal to manage the life cycle to ensure that we are meeting our customer satisfaction and quality management.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It's a very interesting dynamic in terms of as your company is growing and scaling, you're doing more sophisticated work.
Yes.
And so that has to change kind of some of the work streams, work processes, as you as the CEO is working with other leadership of your company and with their teams as well, the member of the organizations. So thank you for sharing that. And also, you've got members of the organization that are in different time zones as well, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Hassan is in the UK and Naveed is in Pakistan. So we have 3 different time zones and I'm in the US. So we are a true agile company.
You know, one of the key qualities that you have to have in clearly growing your company is you need funding and you need capital. Money and cash is the lifeblood of your business, and cash is king, as they say. So as you're approaching, growing and scaling your business, how did you think about and strategize around funding, either bootstrapping, investors, capital from other places? What kind of strategy did you employ to get the capital you needed to initially start and then to grow and scale your company?
It was bootstrapping. It was basically using my own money to invest into the company, to pay resources, to purchase licenses. And based on that funding, that initial investment, we began to grow. A lot of projects initially, I would have to pay resources to get the project. I would do on payment plans. But as the business began to grow, those projects began to yield profits. And that's what ultimately made us grow. So we don't borrow money. We don't need any capital. We are basically an online business, so to speak, up to offices. But nonetheless, we don't really recommend, or we don't have any investors. We make our own way, so to speak.
Fantastic. So you're saying then that the cash flow and the revenue from your company from the beginning has always been sufficient enough. That cash that you initially invested in your profits that you reinvest in the company have been sufficient to help you grow and scale your business today.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay. So I'd like to point out to the CEOs in the audience as well. So that means it's important of 2 things. One, you know how to price your products and services in terms of you're pricing them at a point for which you're making a profit. So don't be afraid to price up the product and services for the market is. And then secondly, you're reinvesting the capital back in your business as a priority, not spending it on other things in your personal life.
Correct. Well said. Not spending it on other things in your personal life. That's well said.
No, I mean, there's the old saying that if you take care of the company will take care of you.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. I like that.
Oh, that's fantastic. And then you touched on this a little bit, but maybe you could go back in terms of what steps have you taken to maintain or improve just the customer experience and the customer satisfaction that your clients have? You gave the example earlier of getting a business from certain individuals in our network, and that's how you got to me. So clearly they had to be pleased with your work to be able to recommend you. So as you're growing and scaling to more sophisticated work, How do you keep your clients happy?
We do regular customer surveys and we engage directly with customers with post-project reviews, which helps keeps us honest. So typically we would engage customers after the project, get feedback from them. How did we do? What are the things we need to change? And I'll give you a good example. We had a customer, was Brad McMillan. He's the CEO of RPM Research. We did the project for Brad because he was a referral from another customer called Donnie. And after the project ended, similarly, we would do the postmortem. So Brad had told me that he had sent an email and said, it's not typically what he expected from us. That was the end of the project. So you could read that email in many different ways. You could take it positive or you could take it negative. It all depends on how you interpret what Brad said. But he basically said, well, look, this is not really what I expected. I expected more of this or more of that. And I think that's what he sent in the email. So I shared it with Hassan and Sam, and they said, well, what is he talking about? We did a really good job. Where did he get this from? So I said, yeah, we don't know. So let me talk with him. Let me have a conversation and figure out exactly what he has to say. So I did set up some time with him. I talked with Brad and his interpretation that there's a lot of things that we could have tell him that he didn't know, that we could have upsell our services that he wasn't aware of. And so we had a very good customer relationship and conversation at the end of the project. And he pointed out some things that I needed to do differently with upsell services. Right now we're doing podcasts, we're doing marketing. These are things that we won't bring to the forefront as much as we used to in the past. And so he pointed out things that I could do better. And the conversation was so good and it ended well. And the good thing about it is getting customer feedback helps you to do better. And so Brad referred us to another customer in Philadelphia, Bioanalysis LLC. That's a pharmaceutical bioanalysis company in Philadelphia. And we got another customer through that. And through that customer in Philadelphia to do website development, we got a managed services contract to do network infrastructure, cloud infrastructure. So talking to customers directly, having these conversations, hearing what customers have to say about your product, taking the good with the bad, interpreting them where you could do better is very, very helpful because you have to sometimes look at it from their perspective. And I would say looking at how someone may write an email and how that email may be presented is not always what the intent of that person is. A lot of times nowadays, we don't take the time to pick up that phone and have that conversation. And we look at that email and we say, oh, let me take that off. That's not right. I'm not even going to respond to that. But sometimes you set aside your differences. As a business owner too, you have to engage customers anyway. So you pick up that phone and you call that customer and you find out what could you do differently? How could you solve that problem? And it works. So I would say customer engagement is huge for us. We always do our lessons learned with our customers to figure out how could we do better? What are the things we did well? And what are the things that we can improve on? And I think that's really part of why we have been successful with so much customer retention and so much growth and referrals from our customers.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, that's a fantastic story. And particularly just the importance of, given all the technology we've discussed today, there's nothing like just a one-on-one conversation on the phone, voice to voice, to understand what people are really saying and what's on their mind. And also, I think kudos to you, because sometimes we don't like to take feedback as a CEO just on a human level, but having an open mind to it.
Yes.
And I think that your reaction probably led a lot to him referring you to some other business.
Yes.
Because the way that you listened to it, and he came away with the critique he was giving you, probably with a sense that you were real sincere, and that conversation was well. So thank you for sharing that great story. And about another lesson learned here, or another best practice for our CEOs in terms of having a real tight feedback loop with the customers, and you as a CEO being personally involved in that feedback.
Yes, that's very important. And to tell you the truth, he has referred not only one customer, but several customers.
Okay. Wow. That's a very fruitful conversation.
Yes, very, very, several, not all have turned into actual projects, but the fact that he keeps us at the top of his list for referrals each time someone wants those products, that's good because we have
Job well
always
done.
been mentioned in the conversation.
But thank you for sharing what you had today, and so many lessons here for our CEOs. I think a couple recap would be just kind of have the grind through the process of getting your education, then that desire to start the business in turn. Sometimes we have to listen to what others see in ourselves that we may not see. And then the foresight and the vision and focusing on the technology and the customer service. It almost seems like when you were talking and sharing your story, it was really a mission of yours to help other businesses grow their businesses or to meet their technology challenges, that you guys could fill that gap. And I really see that sense of customer service as well, in terms of as you're growing and scaling, focusing on the customer always and how they're benefiting from it. And then as you're growing and scaling, your example, doing more sophisticated projects, having a global team and having global projects, being able to reset, optimize, and kind of maybe only use some of your own process reengineering expertise to really understand and just adjust your platform and how you're delivering. So thank you for sharing all those key points. My last question would be, as an immigrant from Trinidad, why do you believe in the USA sometimes that that immigrants from the African diaspora are seen not to make a contribution here to the United States?
I would say, as an immigrant from Trinidad and Tobago and the larger African diaspora, I think we are often overlooked, probably due to historical biases. I would say particular probably stereotypes and maybe having a limited visibility of the contributions that we make to mainstream narratives in the US. We have, despite this, our impact on entrepreneurship, culture, innovation, it really proves essential to the fabric of the US. It's unfortunate. I think my journey here, I have experienced firsthand challenges because a couple of years ago, several years ago, I worked for a company. And the manager told me once she cannot give me the job because of my accent. She said that my accent is too much for that customer. So she would not hire me for that job. She said, I'm a good worker, I'm a hard worker, but I would not be hired in that client facing role to talk with customers. So I would not get a job. And I listened to what she said. I was like, okay, no problem. And I just used that as fuel. I got another account manager job where I was also talking to customers. And so having folks, is that misperception, is that bias at times that they miss and they may undervalue some of the achievement that we have made. And it's important, in my opinion, at least to highlight and really celebrate the diverse ways in which folks from the African diaspora could shape and enrich this society, this American society as a whole. So I think having some of those misperceptions may outweigh the good that we do. But if folks just simply open up, take a look at what we do from a broad brush look, they will see that our contribution to American society, we really are helping to enrich the society in many different ways. And this is just simply business, but there are other ways. There's sports, there's education. I have a friend of mine that teaches Temple University, Caribbean American Studies. I have a friend of mine in Florida he teaches graduate level at the university. So we are separated in different sectors of this culture, but I think sometimes it may get overlooked, all contributions, that is, because of experiences. And a lot of times, too, John, people, they don't know what they don't know. And they may not, you may have experience with me because you know me and you know who I am and you work with me, but a lot of folks may not know that. And so they may already have preconceived notion of who I am and what I may bring to the table. So I think a lot of that could be dispelled if we just simply forget about all of these biases, forget about what you may think about that person, engage that young person, invite them over for dinner, tell them cook a little curry chicken, a little oxtail, and then we should be fine.
Yes, I agree. Well, Solomon, I want to thank you very much for joining us here at the C Squared Biz Growth Iron Sharpens Iron podcast. And thank you for your inspirational personal journey that is not over. No, we'll love to have you back and hear about some exciting things that you're doing forward looking. But we want to thank you for the inspiration you shared from your childhood and family through today, and we're all much the better off for it. So keep up the great work, and thank you for joining us. We'll talk soon.
Yes, thank you for having me, John. I really appreciate it, and many success to you and your business as well, my brother.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the C Squared Biz Growth Iron Sharpens Iron podcast. And check us out on social media, share, and subscribe.